Hello and welcome to Wise Women's Conversation. My name's Angela Council, your host for this podcast. And this podcast is a space for us to be having the conversations that women need as we discover life after 50. Together, we're going to explore topics like health, well-being, mindset, purpose, and the wisdom that helps us live the best lives as we age. So come along and join me for today's conversation. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Wise Women's Conversations. It is great to be here with you, and welcome to all of our new listeners, and for those of you who are watching on YouTube, our new viewers, because first time I've kind of been over on YouTube. So it's really great to be able to be sharing this information with you from different wise women. And I've been having some great conversations with a few different women over the last couple of weeks, and I'm really looking forward to sharing some of those episodes with you and sharing some of their wisdom with you. But today you've got me, and I'm going to be sharing a little bit of my journey of where I've been over the last 6 months or so when I took a bit of a break, and some of the things that I've kind of learnt from that. And those of you who are new to the work that I do, I used to run a 10-week program, online program called Embrace. And it supported women as they came through the perimenopause transition, supported them with lots of the different physical aspects of change that happen to women at this stage of life, things like weight gain and sleep issues and all of those type of things. But it was great. It was a very successful program. For me as a business owner, it was really, really successful. It really built my business. We were making a big difference. The women who did the program, they were getting great results. So it was a very successful business. And I also, at one stage, I was employing coaches. And the middle of last year, a few things started to change, and there'd been changes to workplace laws, which I don't really want to get into, which meant I could no longer have all of the coaches that I wanted. There was lots of things going on, and I was starting to really feel a little bit burnt out. And I was kind of like, is this all? Is there more? I knew I was making a difference to the women who were doing the program, but it was becoming really, really hard. So I made a personal decision, and it was, some would say it was a courageous decision. It was a very tough decision. And I decided at that stage, I decided that I wasn't going to be running Embrace again in 2025. So this was around June. I had planned to run it in September. I just made the decision I wasn't going to run it again in 2025. But I would bring it back in 2026. But then over time, I also had an inner circle, and around about end of September, I decided I was going to shut that down as well. So basically, by the end of 2025, I had no programs running at all. So in essence, I burnt my business to the ground. People kept going, well, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? And, what are you going to do next? And this is really difficult because I'm someone who likes to have a plan, and I like to know what's coming. And so I went into a stage of, I don't know. People were saying, well, what comes next? What are you going to be doing? Are you going to retire? Are you going to create something new? And my answer was, I don't know. I just don't know. And it's really, really uncomfortable to sit in a place of, I don't know. And if you've ever experienced it, you'll know what it's like, particularly if you're someone like me that likes to know what the next step is. I'm always planning what the next step is. And I know for some people, not knowing is really great for them because they just like to jump in and to be able to do anything. That's not me. I need to have a plan. And even as I was sitting in that, I don't know, there was still part of me that's going, well, how am I going to do this? So I'm still trying to make some type of a plan. And so for me, I had to learn to embrace the uncertainty and trust that process of change. And as women, we know we go through hormonal change, we know we go through physical change, but there's other changes that happen to women at this stage of life. And um, I think now in the life that we live now in our generation, there is more opportunity for change than maybe what our mothers and grandmothers had, because basically, as women got older, they there wasn't as much opportunity. Many of them weren't working. They'd all basically been staying at home, so they kind of continued to do the same thing. They just got older and they became, instead of being a mother, they became a grandmother. So there wasn't a great deal of change available to them. But now, living in the world that we live in, where women who have, run businesses, been in corporate, we've had so many more opportunities. Now there's more opportunity as we get older, and more opportunity to change things as well, because, getting to the age of 50 and 60, that's not the end. It's like the beginning of the next step. And I think it's the beginning of that phase of life where we can now start doing what it is that we want to do, rather than, doing what the world told us that we're expected to do, you know, being mothers, being team workers, being bosses, all of that. Now we've got an opportunity to do what it is that we want to be. And I talk a lot about identity. And I think this is the big part, is that our identity starts to change. I'm going to talk more about identity in upcoming episodes. But, for me, the decision to kind of burn everything to the ground, literally, and take a break, it wasn't an easy one, because I kind of felt like, well, people need me. I've got information that, to share. I know I can make a difference. I know I can contribute. I can help women live better lives. And I was seeing it. I was seeing it with the women who'd done my programs, how much, their lives had changed, what they were able to go on to do, even though we were working more on the physical level, but they were making big changes. They were getting confidence back. It's amazing what some of these women were doing. So there was a part of me that thought, well, if I stop doing that, how are these women going to get the opportunity to be able to make that change? But I knew that I couldn't keep going the way I was going. All I was going to do was just burn myself out. And I've done that in the past, and I promised myself I wouldn't do that again. And and I know from me that as I start to burn myself out, I start to disconnect. And that's what I was starting to doing. I was starting to disconnect from the difference I could make in the lives of others, starting to disconnect from the work that I was doing. So I didn't know what I was going to do, but I just knew I had to take a break. So I did. I made that decision, and it was a tough decision to make. And many people say, well, it was a courageous decision to make. It was a brave decision to make. But and yes, it was courageous, because I didn't. I mean, basically, once my programs shut down, there is no income. Yet I still have expenses to pay. So it was, I also then had to let go of my admin assistant. So my decision was impacting someone else, because now she had to go and look for another job. So yeah, it was a big decision to make, but I just felt it was the decision I needed to make, because I needed space. And for me, space always happens when I'm hiking. Hiking is my happy place. Pulling, even in the past, when things got really stressful with work, with the business, pulling on my hiking boots and going out into the bush. And I am so lucky that I actually have a national park at the end of my street, so I can just disappear in there for ages. It always used to help me get some clarity when I was out, just hiking. I was able to, get answers that I was looking for. So for me, I just wanted to hike more. And, I'd had a couple of hikes planned in last September. I hiked the Pyrenees Mountains and, I couldn't have thought about business or anything going up those mountains. They are massive. It was the most challenging thing I'd done physically, obviously apart from probably childbirth, but no, actually may have even been harder than that. But there's that climbing up those mountains, and they are steep mountains. That was challenging. I didn't have time to think about anything else. And I am actually really glad that I didn't have a program that I had to run as soon as I got back, which is what I had planned to do initially. I was so glad because I just needed a really big break after that because that was a physically challenging hike to do. And then I kind of went straight into training for another hike, which I have just completed, which is 105 Ks around the Cornwall coast in the UK. Not quite as challenging as the Pyrenees one, but because I'd given myself the space, and for me that space gave me time to do more hiking and just be present with what nature had to teach me. Nature always teaches me something. And nature really teaches me trust and self-trust. It teaches me that even when we think we've burned it all down, there's still life. And this just happened this last weekend. A few weeks ago, actually, while I was away hiking, the national parks came through and basically did a burn off, and they burnt off a whole pile, a big section of the national park. And that's to make sure that there is no fuel in there for the upcoming fire season. But they burnt through this big section and it was all black. Everything was dead, and the trees were burnt. There was no undergrowth. There was nothing. It was just all burnt. But when I went out there last weekend on Sunday, which was about 4 weeks after they burnt everything off, I saw all these green blades of grass. They were all starting to grow up, and they were probably, I don't know, about 6 or 7 centimeters high, but all through the black, there was this green coming through. And as soon as I looked at that, what that showed me is that even though everything on the outside looked like it had been burnt to the ground and there was nothing left, underneath the ground, there was something germinating. And it just needed the right conditions, and it's been raining a bit lately, for those seeds to germinate and to actually come through the soil and up, into the open air. And I looked at it and I went, this is really like what happens when we close things down in our life, whether or not you're closing a business, whether or not you're leaving a job, whether or not you're leaving a relationship, whatever it is. When there's really big change in your life and it feels like you've burnt it all down, and that's a really big saying, I just burn it all down. If we just sit and allow and be with not knowing what's next and just let that be, underneath, we trust something will start to germinate. And in the right conditions, those ideas, those thoughts, the purpose, whatever it is, will actually start to grow. Now, for me, I've got the ideas germinating. Things are starting to grow. And this is what this podcast is about to start with. This is my first bloom of, what the next steps are. For me, I just want to share some information with you. I want to share some of my learnings with you, and then I want to share other women's learnings with you. So that's what this podcast is all about. The main message of what I wanted to share with you today is trust in yourself, self-trust. And even if you don't know the big picture yet, even if you're not sure, we talk about having visions and all of that, even if you're not sure of what that vision is, just start with some small steps. Just start to move. And it may not even be a small step in the right direction, but a step is a step. It's a step towards something. You can always change direction. And then if you're wondering, well, what's my small step? For me, and what I did personally, but this is just part of what I do and the work that I've done in the last 20 years, is start with your health. Start looking at, is there something I can do that's actually going to, have me feeling better? And that might be as simple as drinking more water. It might just be getting a good night's sleep, moving your body, or maybe if you're, you might be similar to me where you kind of work on your own. Maybe it's joining a community. I've actually started doing some, it's just some dance for fun. I do that for an hour once a week. I also do pottery. So I'm actually going out and doing other things that take me away from being in a business or worrying about what's next. It's really just trust the process, trust yourself, trust that you actually do have the answers. And we'll talk a little bit more about this over coming episodes as well, having a growth mindset and just seeing opportunities. And just when you, how do I say this? When you don't have a fixed idea of what you think the future is supposed to look like, and you just open yourself, you will see more opportunities. And they will be different things. And just try different things. And you can try things and they might not work out. That is fine. But every time you try things, you experience things, you look for new opportunities, you're going to start to get clearer and clearer what that next step for me is. And of course, if you like, pull on some hiking boots and go hiking. That's my solution. It helps me. Maybe it'll help you. Maybe you don't want to do the type of hiking I do. Maybe you just want to go out and walk. Nature has always got lots of lessons. Or maybe you want to go out on a boat and, or out in the ocean and swim, whatever it is. This time of life is a time of change, physical, emotional, spiritual, mental. It's a time of change. If we embrace that change and trust that this is the process, and you might not have the answers yet. I don't have all the answers, but I'm learning, and I'm learning from other women, and I'm trying different things. And I'm looking after my health first. That's my first thing, is I'm looking after my health. Because when my body is well, my mind is well. So that's it from me this week. Let me know either in the comments underneath, whether you're watching or listening to this podcast, or send me an email and tell me, where have you seen that nature can give you some lessons? And whatever nature means to you, or is there a happy place? Do you have a happy place? Maybe that's a better question. Do you have a happy place? And maybe it's on your own, maybe it's with others. Where is a place where you feel comfortable just to be you and not worry about everything else that's going on? Let me know, and I'll be back next week. Bye for now.